Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Iowa soccer supporters. Welcome to Soccer Talk. I'm Ben Brackett, your co-host, along with my good friend Blake Sievers and dog Levon. Levon, quiet, buddy.
Ben, good to be in the lair. Not good to have Levon interrupting our pod.
I know, I apologize. It's so chilly outside. We thought we'd get out of the house together for a little bit. But anyway, how you doing today?
Doing good. Kind of a hot topic we're talking about today. We got a lot of feedback from our first
hot topic on a cold day. I like
That's
it.
Right.
We're talking about CDL and the ISL, right? A lot of listens on that first run through, just like what was going on. I think it was a pretty neutral take, right?
Yeah, I think so. We got a lot of, like I said, a lot of people asked us questions and slid into the DMs, and we've kind of reached out to the three bodies there: the Iowa Soccer, the CDL, and the ISL teams.
Yeah, so the Club Development League and the Iowa Soccer League teams.
So today we've got Matt Carver with the Iowa United Football Club, formerly Jayhawk Soccer Club.
Out of Urbandale.
Yep, and we reached out to the CDL, and unfortunately I think that's our second time we've ever been declined.
Yes.
By somebody.
Well, the first time was also somebody related to the CDL. I don't think they were related as to why they turned us down, but Ian Bradley still has said he won't come on the pod.
I know.
Regardless of CDL or not.
Coach Ian is what Coach Bradley, what we used to call him. And then, yeah, we did reach out to the CDL, and they did not think it was beneficial for them to come on. So we're here with Matt, and then I think we'll be talking to Dan Cataldi with the state once everything is finalized, because we're kind of still in the middle of, evidently there's negotiations going on.
At least conversations. So anyway, let's just kind of hop to it, chat with Matt Carver, and sort of see what he's got to say. All right, Matt Carver, welcome to the studio. How are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you here. Welcome. Blake?
Yeah, so we'll find out. Have you listened to any of our podcasts before?
I have not up to this point. I need to be honest. I mean, I could have said yes. I have not, but I definitely will.
You could have if said yes, because we would have grilled you with the first question we ask every guest is this your first podcast you've ever been on?
No, it's not, actually. So I did the other soccer pod.
Corn-fed.
I did Corn-fed.
Our boys over there.
A year and a half ago, maybe, or something like that.
Nice.
So this will be my second.
Oh, we'll see if they've trained you well to be a guest.
Very good. Well, so I mean, we're obviously here to talk about all sorts of stuff, but we sort of like to hear the origin story to begin with. So I guess I would sort of ask for your, the Matt Carver origin story as a soccer player, but then also as a coach. Mm-hmm. And then I'd be curious, I know a little bit about Jayhawk, mm-hmm. but I would not claim to know mm-hmm. that much. So I'd be curious about how you came to form the club. And I think it's pretty cool what you're doing. So just give us we'll probably interject and interrupt you,
sure.
No doubt. But give us.
I do that often.
Yeah,
just like
that. Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
but please go ahead and give us the deets.
Yeah. So I started out playing in Urbandale in 1980. So a little while ago. So the Urbandale Soccer Club started, I think, around 76, 77, right around that time. And I played recreationally during the 80s. Played then at Urbandale High School. So they had varsity soccer, but at that time it was actually co-ed. So they had varsity, they had JV, but there was no girls program yet. So that didn't come until the 90s. And then I graduated in 1990 there from Urbandale. So played 4 years of varsity soccer, then went on, I was at Notre Dame in the ROTC program in the Army, played some intramural soccer for the dorm team, that type of thing. And then really, I'd say a real formative experience for me is that when I was stationed in Germany, I had the opportunity to play on my local if you want to call a Sunday league team, there in Germany. So I was the only American playing in the league. And
What do they call it there? It's not the pub team, but what
no,
do they-
so it's SV. I mean, the club was SV Harmensdorf. So
Okay,
it's
cool.
Sportverein, and so that was the name. So a lot of them have different SV, SC.
This is like they've got the clubhouse, the whole deal.
They have the
where
clubhouse,
yeah.
right? Exactly.
Cool.
They got the clubhouse, exactly. That's exactly right. So most villages there, and I say literally villages,
Right.
would have a clubhouse. So we had a little clubhouse, had a locker room for the home team, locker room for the visiting team, had an equipment room where you'd have all the soccer balls, all the equipment was all in there. You know, someone from the club would wash the uniforms for you, have them all ready to play. Then you train during the week. They'd usually have 3 training sessions. They had a training field, so even though it was a small club, they had a training field and they had a game field. So you did not get on the game field unless it was a game. That's why it was a match field. And then on Sundays, we'd either play a home game there. I'll back up for a second. So at the end of the week, they'd post who the first team was going to be. So which players were being selected for that week for the first team, because that would change on occasion. So that was posted outside of a guest house right there in town. So you had to go into town.
The whole community sees.
The whole community sees like, who's going to be on the first team for this week, who's going to be on the second team. And so they posted it, and so you saw, okay, I'm playing first team. And yeah, after a while, obviously, if you played well enough, you pretty much knew that was going to be the case.
What position did you play?
So I played a number of different positions. I primarily played left back. So I
I would
primarily
love
played,
that.
yeah,
No,
linkte
really?
Verteidiger is what they call it. Excuse my Deutsch here, but
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And, like, because that's a specific. Does that mean like just
left
wide
defender.
back? Yeah. Okay.
right, left defender. So that was primarily what I played. So the other thing is that the number
We
they
need to
give
change the name of the podcast. We were going to change it to just the left back with Ben and Blake.
the left back. There
Yeah,
you go.
Yeah,
everybody well, not everybody, but almost everybody we have comes on left back.
Well, I guess that tells you something.
That's
So-
We're not sure what it tells us, but
Yeah, I don't know.
welcome to the club.
Yeah, a lot of respect for defenders, right?
Especially
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
defenders.
Yeah, and so
Are you
they-
right-footed?
I am actually.
Yeah,
I am
there you
actually
go.
right-footed too.
I know,
actually
know very
right-footed.
few left-footed left backs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Go figure, right? So anyway, so you played there, played with that club. So you'd go Sundays, you'd play the game. Townspeople would come. They'd drink beer. You know, they'd have beer there. They had brats there. They dropped at the time. They used marks. Actually, they were just transitioning to euros, so they used
So
marks.
this is like mid-90s.
Yeah, this is like mid-90s. This is like
Wow.
this is like 95 to 98.
What an
So
interesting
someone would
experience.
walk around with a beer mug and walk around with the locals, and they drop in. It was really a donation to their sports club, is what it was. They drop in 5 marks, you know, to help out the sports club. And so then they'd watch the game and pretty much critique everyone there is what they did. You know, they were there to yell at us and criticize our play, criticize the other team, cheer if we scored, and then of course yell at the referee. So anyway, so we did that, had the home games, to go to away games. That was really interesting. Sometimes they'd have their clubhouse. Sometimes they're really nice clubhouses. Other times, for me, the smallest clubs, you'd literally walk into the village and shower in some other, like a guest house there in the village is where you'd shower maybe.
Yeah,
And then
that's great.
typically after the games, both teams would get together and they'd have beer after the game. They'd get together after the games and have beer. So now I'm a Diet Coke guy myself. That really confused them, but Coke Light over there. But that was the experience. It was
Still,
a great experience.
Regardless, you're being like social with the team.
Right.
Like, I mean,
Oh,
even
yeah.
if you're gonna have a glass of water with them, you're sitting there and you're like having a chat
Right.
and testing your German.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the little bit I knew, I tested that, and just that was just a great experience. But to see, and I said it was formative, and I think that the thing that stood out for me was the level of technical play, even in a lower league. So what you would have there is you'd have some players. So our league would have been like 8th, 9th league. Okay, and when I say 8th, 9th league, in Germany it's a pyramid. So 8th, 9th league, you have however many 8th or 9th leagues. You have probably 20 or 30 8th or 9th leagues around the country. It's literally a pyramid. And then, you know, we'd have some players at that level who maybe, when they were a little bit younger, had played up to maybe 4th division, okay? And I had a player on my team there who was completely both-footed. I mean, to this day, I trained with him for 3 years, no idea which foot was stronger. He'd take free kicks left foot, take free kicks right foot, and just the quality of some of the plays, some of the opponents was so that was something that for me I was like, wow, you know, we're at a low-level league. We'd sometimes scrimmage against out of season against higher level teams, and so then you get to see even higher level of play. But to see that really stood out to me, and then just to see the culture too, and how much the locals enjoyed it, how much it meant to them, how much the game meant to their, not only the team, but the community. You'd see the children there watching, the children, you'd see them practicing and so forth. And so that was something that I took back with me when I moved back to the States. And so we moved back, my wife and I moved back, and I went to law school at Iowa. Meanwhile, we were having kids, so we had 3 kids at that point. And then as the kids got a little bit older and we moved back to Urbandale, that's when I got involved with the Urbandale Soccer Club. So I was coaching with the Urbandale Soccer Club, had a deployment, and actually I was on the board coach, was on the board.
Mid 2000s,
So
early
this is
2000s?
right.
Sorry, mid 2000s, like early 2000s.
Yeah, so this would have been right, exactly. It's like early 2000s. I probably joined the club, probably like my oldest daughter, Jessie, probably started playing like 2001, let's say, or so.
Sure.
So I can't blame him for cutting me from the Urbandale legend back in, that was before that.
You were
I know.
You were just a little, and you were not. Blake was like one of these Johnson guys that lived in Urbandale, technically.
Yeah, and so that was a bunch of us tried out at Urbandale because that was like, we didn't know what to do. And so there's like 3 of us got cut, and we're like, oh, well, that makes the decision pretty easy on what we're going to do. So
That was when you came to Iowa United.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
So
That's
sorry,
when we
keep going though, man.
Thanks, Matt.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just thanks to you, I am friends with Blake, and I have been for a long time. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
I had nothing to do with him getting cut, but in any case, glad it worked out.
So mid 2000s,
So
you're
coaching, joined the board initially. One time, then I was deployed in the Army, so I was in the National Guard. So I was deployed 2003, 2005, came back. As I got back, within about a year, started coaching again. And I think I joined the board again maybe around 2007, 2008. And when I joined the board that second time, that's when I started asking some more questions about what the club was doing, you know, how the club was spending money and so forth, the recreational club. And then also just asking questions about, okay, coaching pay, how much money was going towards coaching pay from the recreational club, questions about field use, why in many instances then the recreational teams were not able to use the fields for training at all. And so a lot of questions about these different areas, and I was raising these, and it was very clear that those were not particularly welcome questions to ask.
And this was JUSC formed at this point? Okay.
So
this is what-
JUSC,
this is-
right, that was
okay.
right around, so in 2007, JUSC was formed. So initially, Urbandale and Johnson, so at that time, because as you had alluded to, Urbandale had a pretty strong program for the area, the select program, for a number of years anyway.
Well, we just got done talking to Courtney Crandall, who was playing for the Urbandale Freedom, which was like the preeminent club of the time in 2001, 2.
Well, graduated 2000.
Yeah, 1,
Yeah.
2.
1, yeah. Yep.
So it's just.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, and I know that Urbandale Club our age, and then the younger ages.
Revolution was 2004, 5.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they won.
Yeah.
Almost every state cup
Yep.
and competitors at regionals.
Yeah, it was like Ben Lang with Reed Baker,
Yep.
Shane Peterson,
Yep.
plus like other guys. But those are the guys I remember from when I was.
Joey Johnson.
Oh yeah, Big Joe.
So
Yeah,
yeah. So,
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No,
Name
that's fine.
drops.
Yeah, absolutely. So Urbandale had a strong select club, but then there was a feeling anyway by, I guess, some of the coaches, I'm not sure who else, that it was dropping off a bit. So they decided, well, we need to combine with Johnston, and that's when JUSC was formed in 2007. So that was right around the time, just coincidentally. Now again, I was involved more on the recreational side, but I was seeing what was going on with the select, and then another observation that I had, which I think we can get around to this as we talk more about community teams, is that when they went to the JUSC, it was very heavy on the Johnston side. And that's, no fault to Johnston. So, but over the years, and probably just with the growth of the Johnston community and so forth, after that combination, what I was seeing is there were a lot of young people in Urbandale who were no longer playing competitive or select soccer there because they wanted to be on a team with more of their friends. And so that was one of the questions that I raised is, well, would it not make sense for us to maybe try to have a community team, and then if there were not enough players, that then at that point, then you'd combine with Johnston. So again, just another question that I asked. But I would say probably the central focus was of my concerns related to the cost. Okay, so this goes a little bit to the subsidy of the recreational subsidizing. I was asking questions about how much they were charging for recreational soccer, for U6 and U8. It just wasn't making sense to me, the extent to which they were charging these families, and it became very clear that they were charging them more to help to subsidize the select program. And then, of course, select soccer, while it wasn't as expensive then as it is now, was still very expensive, and that was causing a lot of kids not to play because they couldn't afford it. And I made the point at that time that there were going to be more parents, both men and women, like me, who had grown up playing. And so why don't we tap into that pool of parents and community members who have a background playing, who may be willing to volunteer and coach at a more competitive level. And that was something that was just not, as I raised that was not welcome.
You're ahead of your time, though.
Yeah.
Because serious. I was just thinking about this because, like, you're how old?
Yeah. Well, right now.
No, I don't mean this in all disrespectfully, but like, you are.
You could ask the same. You asked Courtney.
I know. I asked everybody how old they are.
Yeah.
Like, how old are you?
Yeah. So I just turned 49.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so, when you grew up playing soccer, you were playing rec soccer in Urbandale, and it was like the first time it ever happened.
Right.
So most parents of your age from Iowa didn't have that experience until maybe like early 90s, say.
Most didn't even play.
Correct. I
His
mean,
age.
so my father, and I know Blake's,
Oh, yeah.
Blake's father, everybody. My dad used to, he'd put on the big old shingars and he'd go play on Sundays sometimes with the boys, and I would go watch, and I would just be like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But that's just, I just think you're just slightly ahead, because there are not a lot of parents of your age that have played at a level that it makes sense to coach your kid.
Yeah, there certainly aren't as many.
No,
You're right.
You're a rare breed.
But yeah, there aren't as many, but there were more than there were. So when I was a kid, there weren't any.
Oh,
I mean, it was
right.
like, unless you happen to be an immigrant, which by the way, then in Iowa, not many immigrants in the 70s in Iowa.
Who was your coach growing up?
Chuck Mackey. No,
Okay.
that's the guy by
I've
the
heard
name
that
Chuck
name.
Mackey. No, he's an old active. Well, I mean, I'm talking way back.
You
heard that
definitely
name.
have.
I'm talking.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know Chuck Mackey.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's my recreational coach. So he had never played. Great
Fair.
man, but he had never played. But and then KG Miller was my high school coach. So
Sure.
KG coached for a number of years, and anyway, tragically passed away. I think in the mid to late 90s, I think it was. But anyway, so those were the coaches. But those were some of the issues, though, back to this issue of cost I was raising. And then I would say that the straw that broke the camel's back was when I was on the board, and I mentioned about, again, my desire to continue coaching my daughters. My two oldest, Jessie and Maddie, both wanted to play at a relatively high level or play select soccer, and I wanted to coach them. And the board at that time with JUSC and then Urbandale Soccer Club, they adopted a policy that parents were not permitted to coach at that level. They would not be permitted. And that to me just, and I know they're different, so there's some different philosophies out there. Oh, the parents favor their kids, they can't be objective. I understand that. There can be fair points here or there. I've heard some of that. At the same time, when here we're providing a much lower cost opportunity with a coach who did have a background, who had played, who had an opportunity to even see soccer overseas and so forth, and to say that I wasn't able to coach my kids, it was at that point that we decided, and I say we, there were other parents, that two teams, we had two girls teams, so this is how the Jayhawk Soccer Club started around 2010. There were two girls teams that sort of broke off and started the club, and at that point we applied with Iowa Soccer to be an affiliate of Iowa Soccer, just expecting that we'd be approved. When we went through, we became a tax-exempt entity, did all the things, we looked at the application, did everything that we felt we'd need to do, and we applied, and then we were surprised to find out that we were denied. So we got a letter, and the letter very clearly stated that we were denied because there were already enough clubs in the area. Okay, to paraphrase what they said at that time, there are already enough clubs in the area, Des Moines doesn't need more clubs. And this was especially confusing to me because I had already gotten on the Soccer Federation's website and looked at their grievances, and there was a grievance decision, the Columbia Basin decision from 2002, which specifically had stated that a state association may not deny membership off of there already being too many teams or clubs in an area. So, it was almost directly on point. But unfortunately, that the Soccer Federation, when I contacted them, they said, well, that's not our job you need to file a grievance. So you can't, so I was sharing this grievance with the board at Iowa Soccer. I was regularly communicating with Iowa Soccer about this and our concerns. Hey, we just want these kids to play soccer at a low cost, have a good opportunity. And, and I feel that some of this, I believe Iowa Soccer was being put up to this by some of the big clubs that were charging a lot because they didn't want competition. It's just my opinion. But they didn't want some upstart club coming in because once you allow one upstart club to come in, then more upstart clubs come in. And interestingly, that's exactly what's happened. And so,
that's in a competition, what's the quote? Competition breeds
competition.
Yeah, which is a good thing, I think, arguably. So that's interesting.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. And so I'll sort of fast forward, but we went through this for almost 5 years, where we were not affiliated by Iowa Soccer. Matter of fact, the first couple of years, a number of the local clubs wouldn't even allow us to play in their tournaments, which was a clear violation of Soccer Federation bylaws and policies, because we were a member of USSSA, which in USSSA is part of the Soccer Federation, but yet initially they wouldn't even allow us to play in tournaments, and those tournaments had U.S. club teams and other teams like that, so they should have permitted that. Eventually we did get into some of those tournaments. It probably took a year or two, but again, the process took 5 years before we finally raised $4,000, and so we had to pay $4,000 to the Soccer Federation so they could have an arbiter come in, an attorney from Minnesota, and we had a hearing at the Marriott, and at the hearing, Urbandale Soccer Club, and it representatives from JUSC, I believe, and Iowa Soccer was there arguing against us. Now, this is the old Iowa Soccer, I'll say that, sort of the old Iowa Soccer.
Because this is, when you guys had this hearing, it was
2015, I think. I think it was 2015.
Okay, so not too long ago, actually, but
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe it was 15. I
don't know if you can call it old. I would just say the previous administration.
Yeah, the previous. But I just want to be clear, different leadership, and And so now, fortunately, since I happen to be an attorney, we didn't have the cost of needing to pay an attorney. And so I should mention too that I learned when we initially were denied membership, some other soccer supporters from around the Des Moines area reached out to me and said, hey, the same thing happened to us. And they sent me their letters. They'd gotten the same letter. There was a group out of like the south side of Des Moines that had been denied membership that wanted to start a club. There was a group from, I think, around the Grimes area or someplace like that that wanted to start a new club. They were denied. And likely what happened was, one, that $4,000 to file the grievance was too much money, and two, they very well may not have had an attorney to represent them to go through this grievance process. And so we had the grievance at the downtown Marriott, and I don't know, it probably took about a month or so, and the decision came out, and we won that decision. So I mean, you can go on the United States Soccer Federation's website, and there's a grievance decision there for the Jayhawk Soccer Club, where they required, the Soccer Federation required Iowa Soccer to affiliate our club.
So now there's two precedences that are now, is that right?
Yeah,
you guys, and then the first one you mentioned.
There are a number of them that are out there. There are a number of other decisions that are out there. There was actually, the Columbia Basin was sort of a key one that I felt that we could base ours on. And then there are a number of other grievances relating to some other issues. Now there is one, Razor City, I think out of Wyoming, and this is Gillette, Wyoming. And that was sort of interesting because when we won our grievance, I got a call out of the blue from some guy from Wyoming asking me about our case and what had happened, and I gave them as best advice I could, and they ended up winning their grievance too. So that's on there. It's Razor City team. And anyway, so those are on the Soccer Federation's websites. But in any case, so we won that grievance, and then at that point, I will say that even with the past leadership at Iowa Soccer, once we won the grievance, they stated, you know what, yeah, we're going to bring them into the fold. Jayhawk Soccer Club is going to be part of Iowa Soccer. And since then, we've had a good experience with Iowa Soccer. And then I'll just quickly note that later, and this is just more recently in the last year, we did change the name of our select program to Iowa United because there was some confusion over the fact there was Jayhawk Soccer Club, and a lot of people thought you had to live in Urbandale because of Urbandale's high school team being the Jayhawks. And so that was sort of a battle we always fought, trying to.
I have a Johnson friend who has or at least did at one point have a squad in your club.
Oh, good.
I think it might have been your first purple club, or first purple team. What, the Crossland?
Oh, Crossland, yeah, Crossland, yeah.
All right, so I got to ask though, Iowa United. Were you? Was it around when you were around?
It was. It was
okay.
It was just started.
So we're old Iowa United.
You guys appreciate this. So yeah, this is a little bit. I mean, this is
like a little hat tip.
This is a little hat tip. This is a little hat
right.
tip. The old, absolutely, it's a hat tip. So,
I don't usually get to coach here.
I don't know if you recall. So I think he played for Iowa United. So one of the guys I played with in high school is a guy by the name of Aaron Leventhal.
Oh yeah.
And so,
we just had Levy on the pod.
Yeah, he was on the pod again.
Well,
the reason for you to listen to the pod.
If only you were a podcast.
I'll start, guys. I'll start. So I believe Aaron was with Iowa United. It was right around that time that they started playing. Aaron was obviously one of the top players from the state for many years, and it probably still is. So anyway, so Iowa United was around, so, and as we were looking for a name for the club, I start searching. No one's using Iowa United. Why don't we go back and exactly like you mentioned, a little hat tip, props to the old Iowa United.
I love it.
That's great.
Should talk to old Matt Kennedy. He'd probably love to be your goalie coach, just to coach for Iowa United again.
We'd love to have Matt.
That's super cool. Okay, so I mean, that's a really good sort of recap. I want to talk about we want to talk about the whole present day stuff, and so we're trying to be as like neutral as possible. Put it out there, but we want to hear about kind of like obviously your perspective, and then kind of like what do you think could we do differently? I mean, because we've got opinions, for
Yeah,
sure,
so yeah,
don't we?
so just give us your thoughts on the entire, I guess, how it was presented, which from our knowledge, was kind of a surprise to a lot of people of the creation of the CDL, and then the standards. Just give us your thoughts on, as a non-CDL member that, I don't know if you say not invited. I don't even know how that even came about. I don't think many people do. So yeah, just
He's just a wallflower.
yeah, so yeah, it
no,
just
and
what's
I certainly wasn't on the inside at all, and it took me, I guess, a little bit by surprise, but at the same time, I guess the actions didn't necessarily surprise me, but I took it as exclusionary, and it was especially ironic, I guess, for our club when I thought about here we worked so hard to be able to have teams in ISL. You know, we had worked so hard to have teams in the recreational league in Iowa soccer, then also have select teams in ISL. So here we've done all this work, we finally won the grievance, and we're in ISL, and we're able to play these other clubs, and we love playing them. We love playing them, like you said earlier. Competition's good. And then the other thing is you had other new clubs that are, you know, UFA's started up as far as what Jaime's done with UFA and so forth, and Iowa Storm and some other, Des Moines Soccer Club, a lot of different clubs sort of popping up, or other combinations that I think are sort of similar mindsets as far as low-cost soccer for both recreational and select. And so I raise that and raise this about these other clubs is, in my opinion, what was happening is that some of those big clubs didn't like that new competition coming in, and they didn't like the fact that here their teams were now playing some of these other clubs where they are lower cost and perhaps are being very competitive playing their teams on the soccer field. And so they needed to, again, this is just my opinion, but they needed to try to find some way to set themselves apart again, the CDL clubs. So one way to set themselves apart is to attempt to set what they're calling, you know, this some elite league, some elite separate league, so that they could explain to their parents how what they're doing is better and how this will better prepare their children and so forth. And, you know, of course I disagree with it, and I do believe it was exclusionary, especially the way they tried to start it. It was no doubt exclusionary.
And I think just for everybody to be aware, and correct me, Matt, you may not know or may know, everybody was just informed about it. I'm trying to think of how. Do you remember, Ben? Like,
it was via email.
Via email, just like from the state, just said, "Here, hey everybody, by the way, here's something that just popped up," and
just so you know, CDL is going to exist now.
yeah.
Which, like, from my standpoint, I just kind of go like, that sounds like it's youth soccer. But I'm sort of detached myself from it. But from your perspective, as somebody who's right in the middle of it, and you're trying to run a club, that must have been a very, I'm not even giving an adjective, but that you must have been taken off guard.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a big surprise and a disappointment, because our teams like playing those teams, and I mean that in a very positive way. And yeah, I would say mostly those have been very constructive opportunities for our teams and their teams. You know, these kids will have, the families have a lot of friends that are with some of these other clubs. So it's not as if, when you look at the actual memberships in these clubs, whatever the clubs are, whether it's ours or, you know, United Football Academy or Iowa Storm or Des Moines Soccer Club or fill in the blank with any of the CDL clubs, it's not as if this is all adversarial between the players and the families. I think a vast majority of them are probably friends outside of this. They've gotten to know each other playing, and they enjoyed playing. So now you're saying, well, wait, so we're not going to be playing these teams, and I'm going to need to tell my players that their classmate that they enjoy playing against, we're not going to be playing against them?
Yeah, so part of our reasoning for this is just because we think that I think that this is a conversation that's probably happening like up here, up here. It's the club executives, it's the directors of coaching, it's the club presidents, the boards, but like the parents and the players for that matter. You know, like we talk about this. Like if I was a player right now and I knew there was an elite league, I don't care what club I play for. I'm going, okay, that's where I want to play then. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's not fair to these other clubs at all. And it makes no sense. Like why, you know, if I live in, you know, name a town, Indianola, like why am I gonna travel 30 minutes and 45 minutes to go play for this club when I could play my local club, in theory. And like it could be positive. I don't even really care about this. I mean, I don't mean that to be like rude. I just don't have any kids. I don't coach anymore. So I just think it kind of blows my mind a little bit. So from your standpoint, I mean, you're just trying to protect your kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we're just trying to give them the best opportunity, and frankly, it's the best opportunity for the kids from the clubs, if you want to call them these CDL clubs, because the more, my experience is that the more clubs and the more teams that you have in a large pool. Okay, so let's give Iowa soccer the benefit of the doubt. Let's give Iowa, which I'm willing to do because I've seen a lot of good things from Iowa soccer here in the last few years. So the larger the pool that Iowa soccer has, boys, girls, doesn't matter, it's that much easier for them to put teams at the appropriate level of play, for whatever that is. Now, let's say that the highest level of play very well may have a higher percentage of teams from some of these CDL clubs, some of these big clubs that are established, have been around. However, I can promise you that there are some teams, including from our own club, there are some teams from these other clubs that are right up there, that are ready to play and have been playing at that level as well. And then, oh, by the way, a lot of these CDL second teams, third teams, fourth teams, as you go down in age groups and so forth, well, it might make a lot more sense for those teams to be playing against some of the team. Maybe it might make sense for a CDL, a third or fourth team from one of these clubs, to play the second team from our club or from some other club like that. And so if you have this larger pool of teams, this larger pool of clubs all together, then you're able to best place teams, and players have the best possible experience to play.
So go.
I was
we're
just
both
saying,
looking
no,
at each other,
it
so
also occurs to me.
this
and
is
then
like
you
a
can just
layup
go.
for you here.
No,
that
it
you
just
can
also
actually
occurs
set
to me that if I'm like, let's just say I'm the 26th best player at the whatever X club, and I'm on the second team or the B team. Now I'm incentivized to stay because there's that hope or whatever to get to the first team, whereas they may be able to play for their community club and get some more leadership opportunities, may play more, may have more competitive games. And at that age, like, I mean, I guess this is another question, and I'll wait on that. But to me, I mean, these are like just young people that we're trying to produce. It has nothing to do with soccer players. So sometimes I think that's probably better, right? I would guess.
No, absolutely, and I think we've seen that with some kids who've come from other clubs that have come to our club, where we've seen some of those kids that maybe were on that second team, and now, just to be frank, they come to our club. Well, maybe now they're on that first team, and perhaps they are in a little bit more of a leadership position on that first team in our club. So the example you use, I've seen that play out as a coach where that's happened, or just what their role looks like on the team, or how many touches they're getting of the ball. Our teams, frankly, will tend to have fewer players on our team. When you talk about roster, we're able to do that. And so I like to have fewer players on the roster, so they're getting more touches, more opportunities. So yeah, I think a lot of times it's good for those players to do that.
So is it fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a big part of the non-CDL clubs, and maybe even Iowa soccer, I don't know about, keep them out of it, but the way the CDL went about creating the league without no standards, no application, just creating it with a specific 9 clubs, that's a big to the non-CDL groups. That's a big problem.
Yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
I think I guess I would say that is. And then the second part of it is the whole application process, right? So since our first podcast a couple weeks ago, Ben, 2 weeks ago.
Which that's why I'm disappointed in the boss here. I wish he would have listened to that.
Yeah, there you go.
Although it's not like you haven't read the documentation.
So,
I have read
yeah. So since then,
Yeah, I have
the
read
CDL has come
documentation.
back because Iowa Soccer said, "Hey, you can't." And ultimately, from I don't know, does it stem on State Cup? Do you think that's the in State Cup of control?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's the main part of the CDL?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's State Cup regionals. Absolutely.
And trying to be do you think trying to be in control of the rules? Do you think that's part of it or not?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I think, matter of fact, now I think it's more of a part of it than I did before. So initially, when this first came out, as I mentioned, I thought it was more about, well, we want to be exclusionary and just sort of separate ourselves. And while I think that's part of it, now that these CDL clubs have come back with this counter proposal, and they've really done away with some of their requirements that they initially had, these air quotes standards that they had. And so now that they've done away with some of these standards where more teams would be able to come in and more clubs would be able to come in, well, now it looks more to me like, well, I see what's going on here. They just want to control the league. You know, they want to be the ones in control. And so for many years, when Iowa Soccer was running a little bit differently, I believe these clubs were largely in control. I believe they were the tail wagging the dog for many years. And then now you have this change at Iowa Soccer, where Iowa Soccer now is focusing more on equity, more on opportunity, sort of looking out for these other clubs, looking out for the lower income players more. And they're not, this is a perfect example where they did not approve for the CDL this past year. And that was probably the first time that I'm aware of, and really a major decision, where Iowa Soccer stood up and said no. And so I believe this has to do more with power and control now, that some of these large clubs feel that they're losing some of this power and control, and they want to regain it.
And so there's definitely been a negotiation, because Iowa Soccer, for everybody that I think a lot of people unfortunately don't know, a lot of the parents of youth soccer players don't know. So Iowa Soccer, for all intents and purposes, said, no, sorry, not going to happen.
They've stayed strong.
They said that. So now the CDL has come back and loosened some of their standards. At least that's what they've loosened some of them, or they said, hey,
from what we can tell.
Yeah, happy to remove it. This one will remain, whatnot. So, which I kind of find it interesting, because some of the standards are, for instance, the grassroots coaching license. We've looked into it, and you have to have an A or B license. Well, to get an A or B, then you have to have a C, which the state has not offered a C in years. And then to get a C, you have to have a D license, which the state just offered, but the first time in a long time.
So here's what I would say, and we can dig deep into this if you want. But I'm more curious about what's a better answer, because
solution. All right. So what's the solution?
Because I know, because you can tell us why these things don't make sense. We can. I would love to.
And that's where I was going to go earlier.
That sounds painful to go through bullet point by bullet point. I'm just more curious, what's a better solution? I have ideas. Blake's got ideas.
If Matt would listen to our podcast, you would know your idea.
You give me 6 more of these. I'll tell you all about it.
So what are the solutions, Matt?
Yeah. So
I have one easy
solutions
one,
as far as this particular issue, or solutions as far as soccer youth development?
I think we're talking about just how do you, because Iowa Soccer, it's not that it's broken in any sense, but it's just stuck in this. It's a product of its own making. So you talk about how we're at a junction where now the CDL group, they want to kind of break away. Well, at a certain point we could have fixed this a long time ago. And ODP, well, it's not super relevant right now. We probably could have fixed this a long time ago. I think there's a lot of things that just have been sitting on the wayside. And I mean, we've grown up, and that's why we're here. So I just am, I mean that's sort of my point. Like, well, we know it's messed up, and it seems like the new group is really trying to change things, and they're looking around the country and seeing they're doing, you know, comparing best practices and all that fun stuff, all those classic buzzwords. But what is the answer?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd look around the United States for best practices in youth soccer development. Just my opinion. I'm not saying there aren't some good things going on, but when you look at the number of players and the amount of money that's gone into youth soccer in the United States compared to probably any other country in the world, and I'm including the money that large professional clubs put into it, we have not developed the players that we should develop. And I'll say this, you guys know this, okay? I look at, let's take this, let's ride it with you guys here. Let's take boys soccer, development of boys players. You know, when was the golden age of development of, if you want to say, elite players in the Des Moines area? And I would say, I mean, just my opinion, I would say it was probably from about 1995 to 2005, 2006, somewhere in that time frame, right around there. I mean, that's when, if you look around,
That's actually a pretty reasonable time frame.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
correct.
I think no. Seriously though,
Yeah.
if you look at the players that were, as far as if you want to say Division I, Division II players, college players, whatever, and you look at how many were developed around Des Moines at that time. And then you look at, after all these continued mergers and everything else that was done that was supposed to help to make Des Moines that much more elite and so forth, it's dropped off. It has dropped off. And so when I look at that, I see, well, back then, you did have more community teams. Now, there were some, you know, like you guys mentioned, Iowa United, and Iowa United obviously had players from a number of different communities, and you're always going to have some of that, and that's great.
Or in your case, Urbandale Freedom, just as an Urbandale club. But I mean, and those guys were pulling from all across the state, but they were like top 10 team in the region.
Sure.
Yeah. There was a team from Iowa United. There was a team from West Des Moines. There was a team up in Ankeny. Like, there were still teams around. It wasn't just one superpower club.
It was one team. It wasn't a whole club.
Yeah.
Right?
So you had some of that, but I guess what my point is, it begs the question: what direction are we going here? And it seems as some of these large clubs have changed and evolved, you know, supposedly for the better. I'm not seeing the development move, you know, come along with that or progress with this what's supposed development here. And so we need to ask questions. The state association needs to ask them, and those clubs need to ask them as well. All of our clubs need to ask them, what can we do to better develop players? And part of it is about development of elite players. That's part of it. But then part of it also, and this is where I think the community clubs come in, part of it also relates to having that pool of players and keeping kids in the game. And that's what excites me so much about all these other clubs that have popped up here recently, and how we're seeing more opportunities, and certainly what you guys are doing, like with the mini pitches. And I mean, that's just outstanding, and helping to fund lower income families and kids to be able to play the game. The more that we get that, again, the clubs, things you're doing, things other nonprofit groups are doing to help these families out, get more of these kids involved in the game, you're going to see more kids playing recreationally, you're going to see more kids playing at select level, you're going to see more elite players, in my opinion. And so that's what I believe we need to do more of. And that's what, you know, you talk about overseas or other places, that's what they do. They have their local teams, and then if a player is good enough, then they're identified, and then they play at a higher level. But when that player leaves, it's not seen as a negative thing. But I would assert right now, and I guess this is sort of bigger picture, and we can sort of get back to maybe the CDL and so forth, but I would assert right now that let's say if you want to take the Des Moines area, really you probably, whether it's boys or girls, you probably only have enough. You'd really have one elite team in Des Moines. Okay, so let's just say hypothetically, let's say you did, and I think Ross is doing some really good things. Ross is helping to sort of bring ODP back. I would say they're putting more emphasis in that. But let's just say that ODP, until we have a professional club here, which we're all excited about, it's coming. Maybe someday they'll have an academy team. But until you have that, maybe it's ODP. That ODP has the sort of one elite team for an age group. Okay, so these are truly elite because let's be honest, Des Moines area is not producing 15 players that are going on to play Division I or Division II every year. It's not.
Agreed.
Right?
Yep.
Right? And so if that's the case, then why would you need more than one elite team? Then outside of that, then the other kids who are, some of them may go on to play college at some level, maybe very good players, but they're playing for their club. They're playing for their club, their community club, whatever clubs are out there right now that they choose to play for. Again, all under the umbrella of Iowa soccer through, if you want to call it ISL, and having said this, and maybe this brings it back a little bit to the CDL, hey, these CDL clubs, they may have a couple of ideas here that are worth talking about. But the thing that I push back on them, though, is why is it, I'm not hearing anything or any examples of how this has been raised with Iowa soccer and they've been unable to provide a solution or an opportunity here. I'm just not hearing that. It sounds more like, well, we want to do this thing, and so we're just going to take our ball and go off somewhere else and do our thing. Why not raise some of these issues? So if you look at, let's say, they talk about centralized play, just for people listening. They talk about having an opportunity to have some centralized locations. It's easier for them with coach coverage, whatever. Having some of that, well, doing that is probably a good idea, largely. I wouldn't say it's a good idea for every game, but for many of the games it might make sense. Well, that would seem to be something that ISA should listen to that and look to see what ISA could do so there are more centralized locations to be able to pool teams together, referees together, all that. So there are some, I guess my point is, there are some valid points on here that CDL teams raise, but I just don't believe that they've truly given ISA the opportunity to provide solutions.
So these seem like, I mean, I don't disagree with that point, but it seems like a little bit of a detail. It's minutia. What do you think? Is there like a solution that's maybe on a broader scale? Like, you talk about having, whether it's like an ODP and let's just hope like the Pro Iowa and ODP find a way to meld together and create a unaffiliated, unbiased top team that can just like scrape off that top, like whatever it is, 1 to 5%. Let's say that happens. So then how do we get the most out of the rest of these kids? Because I mean, there's this part of it, it's where it's like, let's develop players, let's teach sportsmanship and character, and let's teach them how to play out of the back and defend as a team. But then there's these other things that come from, like, maybe like, let's teach them how to win, or like how to prepare, or how to just not lose, or whatever it is. And where is that, like, do you have any thoughts on like, how do you teach both of those things? Because to me, when you talk about the difference between 95 to 06, like, we were always worried about winning. That was just the culture that we grew up in, and that's been sort of poo-pooed, or poo-pooed. That's not the technical term, but it's definitely been discredited. So like, how do we reconcile that? Like, do you want to be competitive, or do you and win, or do you want to just like look pretty while you do? I don't know.
Right.
So just tell me what you sort of think about that, and how do we fix it, or do we fix it, or is this just a product of culture?
All right, Siebes, that was a fun chat. Nice first time I've ever had a chance to speak to Mr. Carver.
Yeah, you're right. It was. Hopefully our listeners thought it was beneficial. Hopefully people that did not know some of the things regarding the CDL now do, a little bit at least. And kind of the challenges that the league is creating for others, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah, at the least it's just getting, everybody getting another perspective. It's definitely something I don't know much about. So I enjoyed it, and I love learning a little bit and having a conversation with somebody new.
Yeah, so do I. And like we kind of talked about, once this is all said and done and whatever decision has been made by Iowa Soccer to allow the CDL to be a state championship series league, we will, hopefully have the state on to kind of talk us about the process, and that'll definitely be an interesting one, I think.
It will. I will. I'll look forward to that, especially to do so with you, Siebes. It'll be good. Do we need to plug anything?
I don't think so. I mean, join the supporters club if you stuck with us this long. Get some swag. Follow us on social
We've
media.
been shipping that stuff out, so stay tuned. Keep your eyes peeled, and when you get it, show it off.
Yeah, stay tuned. I think maybe we'll have another guest or two as well from a non-CDL organization. So
yeah, right on. Well, good chat. Thanks, Blake.